Oh, I totally forgot about this meeting and my like watch had a.
Oh.
I had like, it was set up.
It's like, we're supposed to start doing, I forgot his name too, but I can. Okay, but you know her. And then Sean, and Chuck.
And this too.
But I don't know that, I mean, I don't think there was much action.
I think maybe.
Taylor sending out.
Taylor.
Thank you.
But kind of Chuck's coordinating with Brad, so I don't know that I'm on the. We have something drafted.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So,
it's not like we have to go do it. And then it just took so long.
We just have to.
Chair Galloway to show up that I had to leave.
Good evening, everyone on live, can you hear us well?
It's a bit quiet, but I can hear you all right.
Can you hear us? Um, Can you hear us, Nathan?
Yeah, if you, it's a little quiet, but I can hear it okay.
If I'm quiet, somebody else should try.
One more minute. Call the meeting to order. Hello, everybody. Let's see. Looks like we have one board member or one voting member who is attending virtually. I think that's it, right? Oh.
Who are supposed to attend virtually, yeah, but we have also a new member of the city, so why and.
Hello, welcome. Should we do introductions, or I guess we could do that when we do the agenda.
Right, and that can. Yeah.
Okay, all right, so do you want to do attendance first?
Sounds good.
I think so.
Miss Sarah Medley.
Present, hello, I'm the chair of the committee, I'm a city resident. And welcome. Come here.
Miss Diana Chen.
Here, I'm the vice chair of the committee. I'm also a city resident, but I'm here representing.
Mr. Stuart Gardner.
Here, Stuart Gardner, city resident, welcome.
Mr. Jose Gomez, not able to attend today, we hear from him. Mr. Patrick Healy.
Present, and I'm city resident, I live in the Ridge Street neighborhood.
Mr. Ethan Kyle couldn't come today. And Mr. Lee Condor, he said he was coming for.
Albemarle County, I'm kind of a resident troublemaker, like most things that he doesn't like, so.
Mr. Mike Beck,
Also, sorry.
is not here. Mr. Nathan Moore,
I'm here online.
then Mr. Island, will be replacing Greg Weaver, who was appointed by the city. Welcome to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Wai. Actually, I moved to Charlottesville very recently. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Mr. Danny Yoder,
I'm here. Hi, everybody. I'm a city resident.
Mr. Peter Thompson. You muted.
I can barely hear anything that's been said. So.
Yeah, I'm actually with Peter on that. I heard Sarah kick us off all right, but everybody else has been really quiet.
Yeah. So I don't,
We just have to speak on the problem.
Maybe, or I'll.
Yes, they may have to change stuff.
We just have to project.
So that's everyone.
Okay, well, it looks like we have more than half of the members in attendance, so we can vote to allow the virtual members to be able to vote on matters. Does anybody want to bring that forward?
So,
A second?
Second.
Any, all who approve?
yeah,
Yep.
Any disapprove? Yes. All right, so it passes. Nathan and Peter, y'all are welcome to vote on all of the matters. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak? Nobody in person, but is there anybody virtually?
I do not see anyone.
All we have are guests that we're expecting for the meeting today.
Thank you, Sarah. In that case, we can move forward to general administration. Have y'all had a chance to review the minutes of the meeting agenda? Anybody want to bring forth to approve that?
I'll move to approve the agenda and the meeting minutes from last meeting.
Thank you. All right, and second? Thanks, all who approve?
Wait a minute, yeah, for discussion part, one small amendment, I had, mentioned, I think, Minneapolis and Boston. It came up as Madison, Wisconsin. And while they are highly praised as a bike thing, their approach, I don't think is, is worth looking at, but not that applicable
Okay.
to our situation.
I'll make that.
So that's what and you don't have to go into all of that.
Yeah,
but
I will
it was
say
Boston.
that when I listen back on the recording, if I haven't heard something clearly, I'll go back and listen, so I'm sure that that's what happened.
Sure,
So
no,
that's why it's really important to project.
Exactly.
So, when I
No,
listen
no.
back, yeah,
when I saw it, I thought, well, let's see, Boston, Madison, So, yeah,
What section was that in?
I don't know, that was
Oh, okay.
down in there somewhere, and I was glossing into this. Wait a second.
Okay. Well, thank you. Would you like to approve it with that correction?
Yes, I amend my motion accordingly.
Thank you. Donna, second? Okay, all who approve?
Yeah.
Any nays? Alright, so that passes also. And then, we can move to new business. It looks like we have, I don't wanna butcher your name, but the Campo demand model use, the travel demand model usage from Campo.
Yes, and so I can go ahead and kind of kick us off and give us an introduction while our speakers get prepared online. Right now, the MPO is currently undergoing an update of our regional travel demand model, which is a traffic forecasting tool that's primarily used for LRTP, but it's also used for studies that VDOT's completing, and folks are also welcome to request that data to run their own analysis. So an update occurs every 5 or 10 years. Every 5 years, it's a minor update. Every 10 years, it's a major update. And we're currently undergoing a major update with the help of VDOT and their consulting team, AECOM. And so we have a couple folks online here today. They've also included in their presentation a little bit of background information on what the modeling process is, which I think will be really valuable for the group. So And if our presenters online, if you all want to come off mute really quickly and maybe just introduce yourselves before jumping in.
Yeah, let me start first. Good evening, everyone. I'm Roy. I served as a senior travel demand modeler with transportation, mobility, and the planning division at VDOT. I'm also the primary modeler for the Charlottesville and Albemarle regional model. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Who will do the CTAC?
Then I think Nag or Pat, that is from our consulting team. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah,
First?
hello.
Yeah.
I'm Pat Coleman from AECom. I'm the project manager on the consultant side for this travel model update. Nag, who's going to introduce himself, is the primary modeler and will be giving part of the presentation. Nag?
Hi, I'm Nag Kashai. I'm a travel demand modeler with AECom. So I'm helping with the travel demand forecasting aspects of this model update.
Thank you so much, Nag. Are you sharing the screen? Can you see our screen, or because I'm already sharing over here? Did you prefer you share it, or it's fine and I can move along? Just let us know.
Shared in this one.
Either is fine. I can see the screen.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see the slide deck.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
Just for the online folks, sorry to interrupt. I know I'm calling in from online. We're not seeing the presentation mode. We're seeing the presenters mode, which shows like the next slide in the notes. I don't know if you put it in presentation mode for the viewers online.
Can you see it now? Oh, screen sharing stopped. Can you see it now?
Yep, that
Yep.
helped. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, goodness.
Although it's not moving though.
That's fine. Thanks for your patience, everyone. How about we just save it as a PDF?
If you ask sorry, Nav to share the screen, that probably won't be able to. Those are the.
Yeah. Hey, Nag, are you able to share your screen?
Sure, I can.
Thank you.
It worked before the meeting started.
Not sure.
I had a meeting today on Zoom where everything went wrong. It's not working or anything, and I feel like I've been doing this for 5.5 years. I shouldn't be this hard.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Roy, you wanna lead us into the presentation?
Yes. Hey, good evening, everyone. In today's meeting, I will begin with a brief explanation of what travel demand modeling is and the overview of travel demand modeling in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Following my remarks, our consulting team from AECom will share more details about the Charlottesville Albemarle regional model and their ongoing work. Next slide, please. Let us start with the basics. What is a travel demand model? A travel demand model is a computer-based tool that estimates tour behavior and forecasts future demand. These forecasts are built on assumptions about growth, land use, and transportation networks. The purpose is to answer the critical what-if questions about proposed plans and policies. In doing so, it helps decision makers evaluate options and make informed transportation planning choice. Next slide, please. Virginia maintains 11 region travel demand models along with Virginia statewide model. These cover key metropolitan and urbanized areas, including Charlottesville, Albemarle. Together, they form a framework to analyze travel pattern and plan for future transportation needs. Next slide, please. So modeling is a collaborative effort. The VDOT modeling team will provide data, technical support, and maintenance. MPOs contribute local demographic and planning information. District planners use models to evaluate project performance. By working together, this group ensures the models are consistent, reliable, and relevant. Next slide, please. To guide this work.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, good. To guide this work, VDOT developed the travel demand modeling policy and procedures manual, updated regularly over past decade. It sets clear standards for developing, calibration, validating, and apply models. This ensure results follow best practice and support effective decision making. In short, Virginia's statewide and regional models backed by collaboration and clear policies give the Commonwealth the tool to plan confidently for future mobility, growth, and infrastructure investment. I will now turn it over to our consulting team, NAC, who will provide further information on the travel demand modeling and the Charlottesville Albemarle region models. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rohit. Initial slides will just go over what general modeling is and what Campo model needs and what it can help us with. Campo model is a 4-step model which comprises of the generation, distribution, mode choice, and the assignment. These are all the critical steps that can help analyze and forecast the travel demand. So the first step, generation, helps us to estimate how many trips will people make, distribution, where they go, mode choice, what are the different options they have, and how much percentage of the trips use the different modes. And we further divide that by the time of the day, and then we assign it onto the model network, which gives us an idea of how the demand is being served. So going into a little bit more detail. So the first step is the trip generation, and the typical the purposes of the trips include home-based work, home-based other, and non-home-based. Home-based work and the home-based other are the trips that originate at a home, go to either work or shopping or something else, and non-home-based are the trips that occur which do not include home as part of their trip. So that could be like going to a lunch from work, or shopping to work and between and back to work or something. So basically this step helps us determine number of trips generated at each zone and then what purpose are those trips comprised of. And once we have the number of trips, then the next step is the trip distribution, which helps us to distribute those trips among the zones in the model. So that that distributes the productions and attractions that happen from a zone to the different zones. And the third step is the mode choice, where we now know how many trips occur. And now this step helps us to determine out of those trips, what are the percentage of trips that use either auto or transit, the two options we have in the model. And then the last step is the traffic assignment, where now that we know how many trips occur between zones and what modes they take, now they are assigned onto the network, which helps us to determine the path that travelers take to go between their production, origin, and their destinations. So what can the model tell us? So once the model is run, it can help us to estimate the traffic volumes by vehicle classes, autos and trucks, and by different time periods. We have the AM, midday, PM, night and the daily, and then the speed, travel times, and how congested are the network, and the vehicle miles traveled and vehicle hours traveled. For the transit ridership, it gives us the different stops, different routes, and the different time periods. We have peak and off peak, and how many people use for each time period. And we also get the other metrics, such as the total trips happening in the model area, what is the average trip length, what is the different share of the trips that occur in the region. So some of the inputs the model needs are as follows. So the primary basic building block of this model is the traffic analysis zone, also called as the TAZ. So these are the smaller regions, geographical units that are used for the analysis. And in this model, we have about like 307 TAZs. And we also have external TAZs, which are the important roadways that carry volume into and through the model area. So we, in this model, have about like 43 external zones. So for each corresponding TAZ, we also have demographic data, which tells the model the number of population, households, employment, college enrollment, income levels, for the given TAZ, and that's one of the inputs to the model, based on which the model generates the number of trips which get distributed through the other steps of the model. So this demographic data developed needs to be approved by the local and the regional planning agencies, as it is also tied to the local comprehensive plan assumptions. Apart from the demographic data, the model also utilizes American Census Survey and the household survey, the National Household Survey. We also then compare with the VDOT volume counts to make sure the model is representing the activity that's going on in the real time. And for the transit, we also need the GTFS, which is the General Transit Feed Specification, and that's a format of inputting the schedules into the model. And we also have the functional classes, posted speed information, so that we can accurately represent the existing network opportunities and the network information into the model. For the highway network, some of the inputs that go into the network definition are the geometry, the length, the traffic, the travel speed, and the travel time, and the number area type, and the number of lanes, the length, and the other attributes. This is a snippet of how the network looks like in the model. For the transit, we do have the route numbers, the fares, the operational speeds, the headways, the different stops that the routes in the region use, and the different modes. So why do we need to update the model? We would need to input the latest network, latest land use data. So that helps us to review what's the input in the model and then update it to the current condition. And we also compare it with the different observed data sources to ensure that the travel market, which dynamically and constantly changes, now reflects what's observed in the field. And we also make use of the current ridership and the traffic information to ensure that the model is reflecting the current scenario. And we also have a bunch of model parameters that we will adjust to ensure that the model outputs are in line with the observed data sets. So for the demographic data, we did present the Campo model update process in the last month MPO policy meeting, where we also discussed the TAC structure used in the model, how the demographic variables were estimated, and we also presented the summaries for those. And we also presented the base year network. And also presented what's the possible uses that can come from the model and how we can use for better guidance. And towards the end of the meeting, the MPO board approved the 2022 base year demographic data. So these are the current status and the next steps. So we are completing the data development and model input tasks, and we are working on the model validation, and we anticipate to finish that before January of next year. And once we have that, we'll finish the sensitivity testing and dynamic validation before February. And we will use that as a basis to develop the future year model, which we anticipate to have before March 2026. And once we have that, we'll develop the model documentation by mid-March and provide a model training. At this point, we anticipate it to be before April 2026. So this is in brief what we have been doing and how the overview of the model and our timeline.
I have a question, but I don't want to speak. No. I have a quick question about the mode choice step for the model here in Charlottesville. Charlottesville has or at least within the city, we have a relatively high non-motorized, biking and walking mode share, but I see on the slide that only auto and transit shares are considered in the mode choice step. I'm not sure if this is like the choice of the consultants or this is the way that VDOT prescribes these local models, but I just kind of wanted to know why we're not explicitly considering, walk bike, especially as we invest in more of these bike infrastructure around the city.
Yeah, so Nag will jump in as well. These are just sort of simplified graphics to explain the concept of each of the 4 steps. This does not mean to imply that these are the only submodes in the Charlottesville mode choice model, and non-motorized is taken into account. So these are kind of neat graphics that are intended for sort of a general audience and not specific to any one model.
So on top of that, I guess I wanted to ask, sorry, this is really technical because I'm a transportation planner myself. In terms of the auto transit and non-motorized models, are these actually based on data we have from locally, or is this distance based? What kind of equations are being used in the choice model?
It's a nested logit model, and it's based on local ridership data that's being collected. As well as for the other modes, as well as the National Household Travel Survey add-on for this region. So we have a de facto household survey, and then we have data from boarding counts and the like from on the transit side.
So this is my question then is for the walk bike mode, I believe in the National Household Travel Survey data, it is only for the commute trip, right?
Yeah, so we would have to infer for others, you know, the university and such.
I guess
what
I'm
that
wondering
might
if
be.
like locally, we're making any effort to collect that kind of data. So that we can, it's like, I think it's particularly important for a city as compact as ours that actually has opportunity to grow walk bike mode, but if we don't have the correct inputs into the model, we won't know what is the impact of, you know, investing in the bicycle infrastructure, like it's not, we're unable to see that effect.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I've personally noticed a lot of extra bikers on the roads these days.
I mean, that's see that bike here this evening, I think. So, and your trip wouldn't be counted right now on the survey data. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. My name is Peng Xiao. I'm the Modeling and Accessibility Section Manager from TMPD, Central Office VDOT. And so I think my colleagues like Roy already gave you a brief introductions for what's happened for our Commonwealth, the travel demand modeling, and how we develop from our consultants. AECOM already give you introductions for how that Charlottesville model was updated right now. So to answer this lady's question regarding the non-motorized trips or whether we have a plan to add those components into our model. And this topic is not like a fresh topic. We have a consideration more than like 5 years since it's 2020, because I realized for most like the urbanized area, they have the demand consideration to add the component into the travel demand model traditionally. But just like Pat mentioned, you know, travel demand model is kind of a static model. It's 100% related on the historical data to validate and calibrate the model. Just like you mentioned, the National Household Survey data, and also like a traffic count data, and also the transit ridership data, and all kinds of, even including the school enrollment data. All kinds of data is provide the support, evidence to support the model calibration and validation. So ideally, I believe like for our AECOM, their capability, they definitely can develop a function and to add into this model based on whatever you want to add into a pedestrian and biking system, whatever forecasting into the model. But the truth is, even we add those system or function into the model, we don't have a practice data, historical count data to support your model can produce accurately relative confidence data. Let us say, okay, your model is validated. So that means even you have the function, you cannot apply this model into the future projections, because the people will definitely question about those. Yes.
I totally agree with you, and that's why I suppose I don't know if I'm, you know, asking the right people here, but we do have representatives from the MPO here. I'm just asking, in a city like ours, region like ours that has a relatively high bike walk share, is it worthwhile to stress the collection of local bike walk count data, so then it can be added? I understand from the modeling perspective, if we don't have the data, we can't do it, right? But it seems like if we made a focused effort to do this, doesn't, like, we're not that big. Could we do this from a resource perspective? Because otherwise, it's just.
Let's use the model.
What's the use?
Right.
Well, I mean, like, it's useful for other things, of course, like trucking traffic and all these things that are important, but I think it doesn't tell us anything about all the investments we've been making into the other ones.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So to me, it's I think a little bit troublesome about this validation using historical data, because one of the biggest criticism on like this traffic demand modeling has been that it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, because yeah, we need more road because we'll expect more traffic. And then you build more road, it becomes much easier to drive. And then there become more traffic. There could be bike lanes or public transit there, but because of the modeling projection, we build the road, more lanes, and induce more traffic, and that produce the more traffic. And by nature of the model, I think it's kind of troublesome to use historical data to validate, because there have been many cases where it failed spectacularly. Like one big example was Cheonggyecheon in Korea. I was in I lived in Seoul, so I know firsthand. So every model projected that there will be massive traffic congestion, and it was like really bad after removing this highway. But yeah, it didn't happen. Traffic reduced, not just that road, but across the region. So, and that happened also in LA. There was a Carmageddon projected from traffic demand modeling. That didn't happen. And there was I couldn't find the source right now, but there was like last month or something. There was a demand projection going up, but in reality, it never occurred. So I think that nature of the modeling kind of make me really skeptical, especially if it's used to justify like more roads, more car dependence, and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm a data science professor on my capacity. I studied physics and published in mobility. So I will be happy to discuss in depth on the modeling assumptions and input data and so on. But I really would want to avoid the situation where there's a kind of wrong assumption going into the model, a project massive demand, car demand, and then it induce like future road projection. I mean, if you look at 29,
Right. And if
it's crazy, like how wide.
Yeah. And if I could also jump in, my name is Taylor Jenkins. I'm the transportation director for the MPO. I hear your point, Donna, about, does this mean we should start collecting this data? And we definitely recognize we're super data rich for cars and trucks and all of that, right? But we're really lacking for pedestrians and bikes. But that is something that the MPO has been working on. And I know in the past we used to do bike counts on whether it was a quarterly basis or however many times per year. But the staff bandwidth and the volunteer bandwidth that was required for that, I think was one of the reasons why that was stopped in the past. So we've been doing research on bike counters that maybe we could purchase to start, rolling some of those out there to start collecting this data. And so I did want to share that that's on our radar to try and get better with collecting some of that.
When I read this over, my final thought on reading it was, so what? Because, and which goes to what I've already heard here, is we're gonna construct this model such as it is, and then what happens, Honest has suggested that then what happens is we'll build a highway maybe. But I wondered, will this then just go into some other data heap and be considered as data, or what actually happens in the wake of this? That was my question.
Yeah, I have a similar question of like, somebody could speak to the implications of this model or what it would be used for. Yeah.
Hey, Pong, I can answer this one. This is Chuck Proctor. Okay. I'm the district planning manager, and I've been working with central office and the MPO for upwards of 20 years through several model builds. It's just one piece of when we do a traffic forecast for roads, we're basically looking at what the traffic trends are from historic data, as well as what growth's going on in the area, as well as what the outputs of the model are. And we use them as comparison for developing a traffic forecast. The other thing is the MPO has to, if they want to build a project, it's something that would have to be adopted and put in their long-range plan. So it's a choice that the locality and the MPO makes. It's not something that, the model says this is going to be very bad, so we need to fix it. That's not the way it works. It's just giving you information that you can make decisions based on. A piece of the decision, a piece of the data that you can make decisions on. So it's not, you're going to do this and it's going to solve the problems, or it's going to show that it's not going to work. That's not the way it works. And I just wanted to point that out. So this is just giving us some information that we could use to, in conjunction with other information, to make an informed decision on what transportation improvements we want to make in the future. And that's all this is. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understand that this isn't something that's going to say, just because it says we're going to have 50 or 80,000 vehicle trips on this road, that we're going to go out there and need to widen it to 10 lanes or something like that. That's not the way it works.
And we could also make different decisions based on what the model produces, right? So even if it forecasts X number of traffic, you know, in 2050, that doesn't mean that our solution has to be a new road. Maybe our solution is, do we look at bus rapid transit? Do we look at, you know, a more connected bike network that could take some of that demand away, you know? So
But those modes, the utility
Mhm.
functions for those modes have to be then reactive to that
Yeah.
elevator to local data. Without that, it won't show a shift towards transit or bike if we don't have that local data. I mean, I'm assuming that we have better data.
Yeah, it's in there. Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for Chuck's explanation. I just want to add another point here. The 12-month model, even we calibrate, validate for the base year, the new model, for example, is 2022, we validate, calibrate that. But the main purpose to use this model is for your long-range transportation plan, especially to constrain the long-range transportation plan, CRP, right? You're going to build up a lot of visions. And using the official approved by MPO, the demographic data, like all land use, the projection for 2050, whatever, populations, employment, auto ownership, everything like that. You see, the model is only a tool. How to use it is the most flexible. So that's like the professor, sorry, I don't know his name, but in the data science, he mentioned, sometimes the model produces some very serious, weird situation or something. It's never happened. It's hard to believe or something like that. The model is a long-term model. And the output always depend on how MPO handle their demographic data. If they think from now on 30 years, they think, oh, all these zones are highly growth, they're going to grow to the sky high, like the population, employment, definitely that will attract or produce a lot of trips potentially like that. So I just want you to pay attention for this one. We only give you a tool. How you use it is 100% depend on you. Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate the answer, and I totally agree. I make models too.
That's good.
So what I'm trying to point out is that, like, historical validation and model calibration, that can be a kind of somewhat dangerous route because of what happened in the past in the US, and because of the nature of the model and how it has been used in the past, basically to build more lanes. So I just want to add the caution, statement of caution that when we use the model, it's validated, but there is a big caveat regarding that by using historical data. And there should be kind of more flexibility in terms of like mode switch assumptions, because that's where there has been lots of failure, that models underestimate how much people willing to switch. If there is a road closure or new infrastructure, people are willing to switch quite a bit, but if it's calibrated with the historical data, the model may heavily underestimate that switch.
Yes, I think I agree with you for that. Yes, but here the things, a couple points. The first is that's the traditional method, like the national adopted method standard. Like not only Virginia state, we have the policy procedure manual from our statewide to maintain all 11 regional model. All the other state, our neighborhood, state of Tennessee, state of North Carolina, state of Ohio, state like Maryland, they all have a similar standard. All these standards is based on the FHWA, like criteria, model validations, everything like that. So we have a relative, the whole standard for the whole nationwide, how we control or modify the traffic model. That is almost a national standard. Another thing is, as you mentioned, because we 100% rely on the historical data to calibrate the validated model. But it doesn't mean, oh, your model validated, calibrated for the past year is definitely will give you such accurate, precise projections for future year. No, even, I mean, all the people know that, the truth. Today, I do these things, not guaranteed tomorrow that thing gonna happen. Even tomorrow, nobody can guarantee that. That's the reason we are talking about a scenario analysis. That is the reason why we call the MPOs doing the vision plan. That means based on your different scenario, you change your assumptions for this zone's development, the growth rate and everything. When you change the input of data, you input this model, see what's going on, what is most reasonable, what is most appropriate for your region development. So that's the key point. Come back to the one point, how to use this model is the critical things. Yes, but thank you so much.
That's right.
So it looks like we are being asked to make a motion to recommend the demographic data that was presented for to be used for the regional travel demand model, to make that recommendation to Campo.
No.
That's in
The staff memo.
the staff memo. That should have been in your packet. And so, yeah, they were using 3 data sources for the development of the base data, Weldon Cooper population estimates, Woods and full employment estimates, and the American Community Survey estimates. And that was from base year 2022. Do we vote to approve the demographics as is? Did we want to make any comments in addition to that? It seemed like we had a pretty robust discussion. Perhaps.
And also just a reminder for voting members online, you need to have your video and camera on at all times to be considered present.
Thank you. Yes. So I can't see everybody who's online right now, but yeah, the CTAC members should keep their cameras on at all times. Thank you.
We need a motion. I'll move that we, I guess we're writing a resolution to policy board supporting this decision on demographic data.
Recommending that the policy board approve.
Okay.
Yeah. Second? Does anybody want to second it?
What's the alternative? That we say we reject the demographic?
Yeah, I think that is the alternative, or we could make a recommendation with a addendum to it or something like that.
Exactly.
So if anybody has an addendum that they would like to add to this, or if they would, yeah.
It sounds like the biggest question was around ensuring that bike ped was included. So if adding that, I would be willing to say.
Okay, so we would make a recommendation using the demographic data with an encouragement to add bike ped data, or at least
Explicitly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're bringing that, and then, does anybody want to second that?
Do we have bike path data? Like what's the extent of bike path data?
In my
I've seen
opinion,
before, but I
yeah.
can't answer your question.
And I mean, when there are studies going on, periodically we'll get bike counts on, certain bike lanes or a shared use path. So those are out there. I know Charlottesville also has the dockless mobility scooters around here, so that could be some data that's available, but as far as comprehensive data sources, I'm not sure.
Also, recent zoning has tended to connect new neighborhoods with walking, multi-use paths and so on. And I've never seen any data on what's going on there, although there's plenty of anecdotal when you get out, there they are.
So I think the short answer is that for cars, or for automobiles, we have those continuous counts, like embedded counters in the pavement that's constantly counting, so we always have that data. And then we also have temporary counts, sometimes you'll see
Yeah.
a tube laid out. If they're concerned about certain locations or filling in that data. The issue with bike ped count data is that it's not, we don't have anything that's permanent, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And then we sometimes have temporary data if there is a specific thing they're collecting data on. But for the most part, this data is much more sparse compared to the automobile data. And I guess maybe I don't know what powers we have, but we are requesting or maybe recommending that we consider a more robust bike ped traffic count / volume estimation data system, so that it does systematically get incorporated into the models.
We have recently approved a pilot program to look into near misses and other things in a couple of intersections, which have LiDAR camera and all kinds of data collection devices involved, and certainly bike ped might just be on.
I do think that that data is not to be utilized for anything besides validating the visuals.
Yeah, above my pay grade.
They're trying to see if how good the technology is right now, so they can use that as actual.
So
Yeah.
so that would actually be more in the line of anecdotal data or.
I just don't think that it's permissible, so.
Yeah.
Nobody's allowed.
They have to show that it's a good tool before you could use the data from the.
I see, okay.
Is this the VTRC
Yes.
pilot? Okay, yeah.
Well, nevertheless, I will second the motion to not make the recommendation, provided that it include bike ped data. However, it be, yeah.
I think that there's a discrepancy here between what we're saying, and some people are recommending that we add bike ped data, and some people are saying that they would only approve it with bike ped data.
And so what we're
So I
looking
think
at,
those are two different
and if it's helpful, what we're looking at here today, what the policy board had to consider was just the demographic inputs, so population and employment. So that's a separate thing than wanting to incorporate, things for bike ped. And so what we can do as staff is we can work with the project team and get more information on what that would look like to build something like that out without the data available, and maybe bring back like a couple scenarios or options that we could consider as part of this update.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, this data seems very standard and
Yeah.
like village input to the model, and
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have to plot that
Yeah.
because it doesn't have the bike ped data. I think it may be a separate conversation about like what are the data available, how the model consume ingest those data, and what are the assumptions regarding mode switch. That's a whole other discussion. I mean.
Yeah, so maybe we could vote to approve the demographic data, and then we could also make a separate recommendation to include bike ped data.
And like
And-
more broadly discuss like
Yeah.
about mode switch assumption in the model. And
Yeah. That seems like a much more technical question, that may be good for the technical committee.
Yeah, just for the
I think so
record, I
too.
guess I would like to clarify, who made the motion and who seconded it? Was it Mr. Danny Yoder and then Mr. Stuart Gardner? Or-
We need another second just for the demographic data.
Okay,
Okay, so all of, sorry.
Okay, well,
Okay,
this is what I have. I
Yes.
had Stuart Gardner made a motion to make a recommendation to the MPO Policy Board to use the demographic data presented with an encouragement to use more robust bike ped data.
I think it was Danny Yoder that made the
It
motion.
did, but then it all changed.
Gotcha.
yes,
And so I struck that and went with Stuart's,
Thank you.
and then Lee seconded that motion.
okay, so we have to vote on that.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to do a completely separate motion on, hey, we want more data.
I think-
Or if it's included in that motion,
This-
where we
yeah.
accept the demographic data presented with an encouragement to use more bike ped, more robust bike ped data.
All right, personally, this feels like two separate motions.
I agree.
Yeah, where we have the
Mhm.
motion just to use the demographic data, and then we have a separate motion to recommend bike ped data and perhaps like more discussion about the model itself.
Okay.
So I have Stuart making the motion, please seconding, is that a word?
So this is just for the
It is today.
demographic,
Just for the
recommending the
demographic.
2022 demographic base.
Yes.
Can I just ask one question?
Mhm.
Is there not more recent demographic data than 2022? Is that the most recent?
Probably the most recent.
Mhm.
So they usually want to change.
Just because that's tail end of COVID, there was a population spike during that time. So if that's the most recent data, then I'm okay with being good.
Okay. So all in favor of voting to use the 2022 demographic data for this model?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
All right. So one opposed, the motion passes.
I don't know, because you're 7 here and then 6.
Oh, there are two.
They're not there. I don't see them.
Oh, they're not on there anymore?
Click
Oh,
participant.
No, you should see them.
There's
here.
there's
Here.
2 of us here. Hi, we raised our hands, Peter and I both.
But they didn't have
yes,
their
I
videos
can't.
on, that's why I didn't see them.
Okay.
Can you change it so that we can see everybody?
I think their video was not on, that's why I couldn't see them.
It was
Oh,
it was on. It was on. I think it's just the way
Okay.
it flashes around to the main speaker.
Okay,
okay. So sorry,
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Nathan and Peter, did you?
We both voted aye. Peter can speak for himself though.
Yeah. So then, yes, so then that passes. Yes, thank you. And then, the second motion was to recommend a further discussion or, to recommend an encouragement. To recommend using bike ped data for the model. Or to ensure that we're using bike ped data in the model. Anybody wanna,
I would second that.
okay, somebody's got a.
I would,
Well, and I just want to maybe add just a small caveat. I want to make sure that staff's able to come back and bring you all more information for how it could be incorporated if we do. I just don't want it to seem like we can say we can incorporate this in case we don't have the data to be able to support
This
that
is
again.
just a recommendation that we would like to use bike ped data.
Okay.
One small concern is that if the data is like really incomplete and bad, it may potentially worse if you
Yeah.
use it, potentially.
I think that's why I don't know if the original suggestion I had was about making sure you incorporate, but actually making the effort to acquire locally available bike ped data in a, more systematic way than we have. I think that was the original intent of the recommendation.
Yes, so maybe we have more specific language for the recommendation.
I would, like, along those lines, I would suggest we maybe back out of making recommendations about data. Just say that we encourage the policy board to include non-motorized modes as a mode in the model, like let the technical people work out what data they use, how they do it, but the important thing is that those are included as modes in the model, right?
I think they're saying it is included in the local model.
Okay.
But I think what we're saying is that the calibration of that is more difficult because of the lack of specific bike ped data.
I think what you're deciding on is good because it's just a model, it's just a tool. At the end of the day, like Chuck said, things will have to be approved and put into the LRTP going forward. If that puts you at ease as we, wrap up this topic.
Okay, so who wants to make the official recommendation and the language that we're gonna use to recommend it? Danny, you had your data or your.
I mean, I guess like, I sort of feel like if they're including non-motorized modes in the model, do we really need to like get into the details of what bike ped data sort, like, I'm hoping that they're gonna follow the best practices available to the modeling profession at the moment. I feel like, I don't know how much value there is in us like encouraging the policy board to make sure they're using good bike and ped data in the model. It just feels very technical.
Yeah, and if it would have been included in that graphic, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's just the fact it wasn't there, and so alarm bells.
Well, then maybe we could instead have and a discussion and a future meeting that talks about what bike ped data is being collected
Yeah.
and how it's being used in the meeting.
Okay.
Agenda item.
Let's add an agenda item. Okay.
Donna, if I have a question on what you just said seems to go in this direction. Because your complaint is that there just doesn't appear to be a lot of data. For this demographic, it's using the streets or the sidewalks.
So when they say demographic data, they mean the stuff that goes from the. Like your incident data, so your household, vehicle
Yeah,
ownership,
yeah.
income, they're not talking about. When we talk about bike data or pedestrian count data, that is considered traffic network data,
Okay.
right? So right now we have excellent information about how many cars are moving on a specific road link, you know, every day if it's a continuous count station, but we don't have that same data for the bicycles. I'm just gonna say bicycles because the pedestrians are different.
Yeah.
So the issue is that we develop this model that says, okay, if we were to put improvements. Let's say we're gonna, build out this entire network of separated bike trails, kind of like what we have along John Warner Parkway, but let's say we had that like throughout more of the city. There's no way right now to really truly project how many people might switch from driving their car over to biking for that particular trip because we don't have very good bike data. We could guess, like we can put best of what we have, but it isn't going to be very good.
And what Boston and Minneapolis suggest is. Your question. Who would use those?
But I mean, and I think I understand what Chuck is saying too, like depends on how we use it, but right.
Agenda item?
Agenda item to talk about bike ped data in the future. It is
do that.
getting quite late and I appreciate.
I think the sound left. I cannot hear anybody.
Ditto.
We need a gavel.
I know, yeah. I was promised one when I became chair, but it never showed up, yeah.
Maybe get one in the podium if you really want it.
No, I would use it too much. Let's see, and so I see the microphone is working. I know.
We can hear you now. We just couldn't hear you for a minute when you guys went to a side where we.
Yeah, it came back. It came back.
Well, we are encouraging moving on. So thank you all for this great presentation and the discussion. We're gonna move on to the very similarly transportation demand management study.
Okay.
That Taylor is going to discuss. Thank you.
I will try to keep us brief, since I know we have a lot of agenda items tonight.
And Taylor, sorry interruptions. So looks like you don't need us anymore like that. We can leave now.
Thank you so much for dialing in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, thank you all for the great discussion. So I'm here today to talk about the final scope of work for the transportation demand management study and some of the changes that we incorporated based on your feedback and MPO tech and policy board feedback that you all had for us. Before we jump in, I will go ahead and share just to differentiate the two of these a little bit. So while our travel demand model is primarily a forecasting tool, our transportation demand management study is looking more at what's on the ground today and how people are moving today. Just to give you that up front. And so just as a reminder, this study was included in our Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year 26. And so this is us preparing to kick off that work. It was originally captured in the 2050 LRTP, the need for a TDM study to basically look at how we could reduce through strategies vehicle miles traveled within the MPO area. The first change that we had was task one was previous plan review, but we broadened it to be existing conditions. We added in here to establish a baseline of vehicle miles traveled so that we can set goals. We understand that we need to have a baseline before we jump in. And then also still including reviewing previous plans for what is already being planned. For task 2, we will still conduct an origin destination analysis. So all of this is the same. The thing that primarily changed with our data sources. Initially, we planned on leaning heavily into streetlight through our access to that free of charge from VDOT. But what we heard from MPO Tech Committee was that there were really some issues with bike ped data and streetlight as well. So another kind of point for how we struggle in the transportation planning process for that good data. So we proposed looking into Strava Metro. And so we did apply for that and we received access for not just the MPO area, but our entire PDC, which is really great. And that's a free tool that we can look at to sort of validate what's going on with bicycle and pedestrian traveling in the MPO area. And then of course, VDOT also has a wealth of data sources that we could use as part of this study. We also added in an opportunity for validating the data that we collect for existing conditions and also for the origin destination analysis. This group specifically asked us to reach out to like local running and biking clubs just to make sure we understand, like, does this data look correct to you all? Do you all have other routes that you take? And so on and so forth. I'm so sorry for those pop-ups. For task 3, looking at mode shift potential and potential strategies, we included in our revised scope of work that strategies might not just be infrastructure related, they could also be policy related. So looking at something like a parking program, maybe, or an employer parking program to encourage that mode shift, things like that.
All right, for this slide, we use the assess potential, like what method are we using?
Yeah, so we primarily are anchoring on a study that was done in the Minneapolis Metro Council area, their MPO. They conducted a study where they looked at the existing trips and they looked at the competitiveness of an alternate mode. So based on if there's sidewalk out there, based on if there's a bus route available, kind of what's the percentage likelihood of them switching their route if something else might have been available to them from auto to a different.
I mean, like in that study,
Mhm.
how do they assess what is the competitiveness? Is it a survey study?
So they did have a regional travel survey where they were using that information to sort of assess.
So here, are we considering developing our own regional travel survey?
So not as part of this effort.
Okay.
No.
So we would just be using the conclusions from Minneapolis, like basically applying the assumptions there here.
I wouldn't say a 1-for-1. I would
Okay.
say we're definitely looking at other ways that people travel specific to our region and making assumptions based. For task 4, outreach and public engagement, we added additional opportunities for public engagement. Definitely through validating those existing conditions as mentioned previously, and then we still have in a survey opportunity for obtaining folks' input on any proposed strategies as part of this study. And then additionally, some of that targeted outreach that I mentioned before with bicycle and running clubs, Charlottesville City School, topic focus groups was definitely something that came up in this as well. And we also added in a project schedule. And so staff have already started gathering a lot of that existing conditions data. And so we are well on our way to that. But we will try to align a lot of our key deliverables with our MPO committee meeting dates as well. You know, that was really brief, but any questions on this one?
Got a question. I mean, I think this is great. I think the city of Green really needs an EDM study, so I'm really happy that it's happening now. And I'm curious, and I may have missed this last time because I missed the last meeting, but in your engagement, are you having good engagement with some of the bigger stakeholders like UVA and maybe, you know, like the Downtown Business Association and kind of people who, I don't know, like large employers can really influence how people commute, especially to areas with limited parking. And there are a couple of those areas in the city that maybe people could switch to an easier mode if they just had the right policy or something offered to them. So I'm just curious if UVA and others are involved in the outreach.
Yes, so we definitely did reach out to UVA Parking and Transportation. And so we've got a meeting on the calendar with them. We know that they have the Wahoo Commutes program at UVA where, you know, there's carpooling, or if you take another mode, you can earn points. So we definitely want to learn more about that and see if they're willing to share some of their information about where people are coming from to get to UVA. So they're definitely packed in. Downtown Business Association, we did not factor that in here, but that's.
Okay.
I kind of a similar comment, it seemed like the outreach for the bicycle pedestrians is to be like cycling and running clubs, and we love those, but those are like recreational and like, I mean, you know, I'm gonna run for exercise no matter what you do, but whether or not I'm going to walk to work is not relevant to how much I'm running for exercise.
And that one was specifically a recommendation of someone on MPO Tech Committee. And so if there are other groups that maybe we could tap into, that would be better. We're sort of. I don't know as well.
Albemarle County, when you engage with that. And I guess, well, probably MPO, we're not gonna go out there outside of that.
No, primarily just the urbanized area.
Sure, and within the city, then, Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Doing that. Because, again, Albemarle is a little more robust on multi-use, because they have land, which we don't. It's a lot easier, like if someone said the job. Those types of things. But Parks and Rec has trail, and they work closely with us in terms of greenways. And so that would be a good one to engage with. And you're just getting started on that from the look of it. So. Can't wait to hear what you hear.
Yeah, thank you. That was very exciting. Okay. Yeah. I think we need to action.
So then we have the staff recommends us to motion to recommend the policy board approve the final scope for the travel demand management study. Does anybody want to close that?
So,
Okay, for that, second? Second, all in favor?
yes.
Any opposed? Unanimous approval, thank you. All right, thank you so much, Taylor, for going through that quickly.
Of course.
This is really, I'm really looking forward to see the results of this also, and the process of it. It looks like Florian is next with a discussion on the TIP amendments and adjustment.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As you're aware, there was some modifications done to the Transportation Improvement Program for the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO. I'm gonna talk about tonight a little bit about those adjustments. I will start with the first one, which is an amendment to the TIP number 13. So in the beginning of fiscal year 2025, the Autism Sanctuary Incorporated received FTA 5310 funding to purchase paratransit vehicles. So based on the funding that they received, we were inquired to put that funding into the Transportation Improvement Program or the document. Specifically, that funding looked like the following. So $159,000 in 5310 federal funding, 20,000 in state funding, and 20,000 in local match funding. Based on that, we recently received another information from DRPT, specifically to reallocate or to decrease some of the funding for the 5310 program. So following that amendment, there was also an adjustment done for the same project, which is ASI 001 in the TIP, specifically to decrease 33,000 from the FTA funds for that. The next projects that we received information for were the Charlottesville area transit projects. And due to the timing of their request, we were not able to provide any information to the CTAC or MPO Tech. So we're coming to you with this information for the first time. But what was good for Charlottesville area transit, none of these TIP adjustments or all of these TIP adjustments, which were 8 of their projects, were considered administrative modifications to the program, which did not require any action from the MPO Policy Board. There's merely informational items, just so all of our bodies can be aware of the funding changes. I will not go through all of the details for the funding, but I just want to mention that there was some increases and decreases in funding, specifically in federal and state. The federal being the 5339 funding source. And these modifications affected 8 of the CAT projects. They included replacement of rolling stocks, passenger shelters, purchase of support vehicles, purchase of shop equipment, and so on. In tonight's agenda, or along with the agenda, we had a staff memo, which included all of the changes in details, a resolution that was specific to the amendment number 13, which is the approval of the MPO Policy Board to include the 5310 funding source for the Autism Sanctuary into the TIP program, as well as the updated TIP document or a link to the TIP document. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. So it sounds like this is just informational, and there's no motions or anything?
Yes.
One that does require motion is the TIP amendment.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the one that the MPO Policy Board had to take action on. So adjustments are just informational, but the amendments do require action.
And then, but they did already approve it.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And so this came to you all after, because we received this request 2 days, I think, before tech committee. So just the timing of it didn't align.
Okay. Thank you. And so then we'll move on to, we're on item 5, informational. And Taylor is going to talk about the recent discussions that we've been having between CTAC and CAMPO about CAMPO administration and CTAC participation. Righty. Hold on.
Right. Hello again, everyone. So this presentation was provided to the policy board at their request. They wanted to see what are all of the decisions and activities that the MPO is actually responsible for to help with the CTAC discussion. I know we've been having some purpose discussions. We've been talking about bylaws. And so this hopefully will provide a lot of information and insight. Why I think this is a great first meeting for you to join, because we have this overview. So we will cover recent meeting summaries. So basically, how did we get here to this presentation? The source regulations for MPOs, the MPO structure, core activities. We'll look at some history and past activities of CTAC, and then other citizen advisory bodies in the state. So recent meeting summaries, beginning back in March at a CTAC meeting following the recent election of officers. Chair Medley requested a review of the bylaws just to kind of give everybody a refresher, to have a discussion on what we're doing here, what are the items that CTAC is supposed to be working on. And so at the May meeting, CTAC members did have the opportunity to review and have a discussion about those bylaws, and they began having a discussion overall about what CTAC purpose is supposed to be. Then at the June MPO Policy Board meeting, after staff brought to the policy board to their attention of some vacancies that were on CTAC, that spurred an additional discussion on CTAC's purpose. And they requested a little bit of additional information that resulted in this presentation. On July 18th, the MPO Policy Board Chair and Vice Chair and the Chair and Vice Chair of CTAC had a meeting where they again discussed, CTAC's purpose, what are some of the challenges of the committee, and what information could we use to help. So staff went all the way back to the beginning. We zoomed all the way out to start answering some of these questions. So we went to the source regulations in federal code, which would be 23 CFR Part 450, if anyone is interested in doing some reading. The one specific to MPOs is subpart C for Metropolitan Transportation Planning and Programming. Subpart A really just has some basic definitions, and subpart B is where the states get all of their roles and responsibilities. So that's where VDOT would find their activities in the sort of regulations. So what this 23 CFR set forth was a national policy that the MPOs would carry out a continuing cooperative and comprehensive performance-based planning process, including the development of a Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our long-range transportation plan, or LRTP, and a TIP document. Specifically in subpart C, MPOs are established in places with populations of 50,000 or more. So urbanized populations, we have a map on here that shows specifically the MPO boundary and that orange darkish brown color. And so in addition to the two items that were identified on the previous slide, MPOs are also responsible for establishing performance targets, developing and using a documented public participation plan, and documenting our activities in a unified planning work program, or a UPWP, that basically says, here's what we're going to work on for the next fiscal year. So committee structure is actually not identified in the source regulations. Committee structure in Virginia is identified in the 3C agreement that we sign with the state. We sign it with the City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and our transit providers. And so the 3C agreement identifies the policy board sort of as that chief regional authority for transportation decision-making, and it identifies a technical committee. So those are actually the only two that are specified in the 3C agreement. But additionally, here in Charlottesville, we have the Regional Transit Partnership, which is a committee of the MPO. I have a star next to that one since that will tentatively sunset in December. And then we have CTAC as well.
How are the members of the policy board assigned or where?
And so the policy board is made up of elected officials primarily. So 2 from Charlottesville, 2 from Albemarle, and then we have a voting representative with VDOT as well. And so their governing bodies determine like who from the governing body will serve on each committee.
They're elected.
Yes. Okay, and the policy board is responsible for the development and approval of those core transportation planning activities. And then the MPO technical committee provides that technical review and assistance in transportation planning. So when we bring all of these sort of more technical activities, MPO tech committee makes a recommendation to the policy board on whether there are changes or updates, and really gives them that kind of technical background. So MPO tech committee, that's made up of local government planning staff typically. So those are, you know, your transportation planning managers with the city and the county. Those are the folks who are typically on MPO tech. And the next few slides identifies actual responsibilities and decision points of the MPO. Some clarity on sort of what the MPO actually has authority over is kind of walked through on these slides. And so I can go through each of them, and we also have the frequency for how often we do all of these things. So the first is our long-range transportation plan. So that is the plan that has a 20-year forecast period and it has short and long-range strategies. So those are the projects that typically have to be adopted every time we update our LRTP every 5 years. The LRTP can be amended as needed. So if there's a project to be eligible for funding that has to be in there, the MPO can amend the LRTP. Next is the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. That is a prioritized list of projects that are federally funded and regionally significant. That's more of a financial document, if you will. So any project that's receiving federal funds, they have to be in the region's Transportation Improvement Program to be eligible. So this one, the frequency of update is every 4 years, but in Virginia, since we coordinate our updates with the state, typically that's done about every 3 years. The Unified Planning Work Program, or the UPWP, is an annual document that we produce. So again, that identifies the major planning activities that we will be conducting with the provided funds. Establishing federal performance targets, we do that. It varies based on which targets they are, and we typically follow the state's cycle for that as well. So those are safety targets, those are infrastructure condition targets, looking at like bridge condition, pavement condition, and things like that. Next, our 3C agreement. So that is the document that we talked about a couple slides ago, where we sign it with our member jurisdictions, the state and transit providers, basically saying, here's who will be doing what in this 3C transportation planning process. Frequency on here we have as 10 years. but we've learned more information since putting this together. Those are actually signed shortly following a transportation reauthorization of the federal bill. And so that happens every 5 to 7 years typically. The annual obligation report is also another sort of financial accounting sort of document. That's something that we do annually. That's a list of projects basically that shows which ones where we had federal obligations on, and that is an informational item. So that's not something that the MPO has to approve or adopt, but it is something that we have to post on our website publicly. MPO boundary maintenance. So that's when we look at the boundaries around our urbanized area. We look at that every 10 years following the census. The public participation plan defines the process for providing interested parties with reasonable opportunities to be engaged in the metropolitan transportation planning process. And the source regulations actually do not identify a frequency for that to be updated. It just says updated as needed. And finally, our Title VI plan is updated every 3 years, and that describes a process for how we comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. All right, our transportation demand model. So you all received a presentation on that one today. That's updated every 5 years is that minor update that I talked about. And so that is our analytical tool. That's just another piece in the transportation planning process. And it accompanies a lot of the work that's done with our LRTP. Functional classification is how streets and highways are grouped into categories or classes, and that's done either every 10 years. There might be a major update initiated by the state, but that can also be updated as requested. So if we were to get a request from Charlottesville or Albemarle to change the functional classification, we could update that at any time. There's a process for that. Smart Scale is a statewide funding program. The MPO is an eligible applicant in that program. And so any decisions on submitting applications, that's something that comes through the MPO, and that happens every 2 years. Then we have the state-led plans and studies, so STARS, Project Pipeline, Virginia's Transportation Plan or VTrans. We participate in those as a stakeholder typically. And so that varies whenever we have those going on, but usually there's at least one happening at all times for those. And then finally, other discretionary grants. So the MPO is an eligible applicant for federal, state discretionary grant programs. So I know that was a lot. Any questions about any of those responsibilities, decisions, roles before we move into the next part? Okay. All right, next we will jump into some CTAC history. So the MPO was established in 1982, and CTAC, before it became CTAC, it was actually known as CHART because our LRTP used to be called the CHART plan. And so CTAC was first established as CHART in 2001, and it was established to develop and recommend updates to the LRTP for Charlottesville and Albemarle. All of these bullets were pulled directly from the original document that was created for CHART. There were not bylaws until later on. And so all we have is that Word document that we've been referencing, but these were the bullets that were included in there. So meet frequently as needed during plan updates, meet no less than annually during interim years to evaluate plan progress and recommend amendments. And then the final bullet, present plan updates and recommendations for amendments to MPO Tech Committee for endorsement and approval by the MPO Policy Board. So that is something that I found interesting. We were really in the archives looking at a lot of this information. And so it seems that the original connection was CTAC to Tech Committee and Tech Committee to Policy Board. So I made sure to point that out in this presentation too. So in 2001, when CHART was established, all of these bullets that you see were identified as the spots or the membership for CTAC. And so you can see we have citizens, and you can see all of these are very specialized groups. And so specific to public transit, specific to bicycling, environmental protection. So it started out very, very specific in what the committee makeup was supposed to be. In 2013, that's when we saw the restructure and the name change. That's when CHART became CTAC in 2013. And that's also when we saw the first set of CTAC bylaws created was in 2013, and those were approved by the MPO Policy Board. So also during that time, membership was reduced from 18 to 13. And when we were going back, similar to how we do for you all today, there are staff memos, there are meeting minutes that we can go back and review. And folks specifically mentioned the challenges of maintaining that very specific and specialized membership that was identified. in 2001. So they removed that and they made the language a lot more broad for that. Appointments by jurisdictions and the policy board. There were also a lot of documentation about how difficult it was to manage that process when everybody was appointed by a different body and there was not one centralized group for appointing CTAC members. And then additionally, in meeting minutes and in memos, we can see that emphasis was once again placed on CTAC being advisory to the MPO Policy Board and not to other outside bodies. And so the intention of CTAC was not to advise the city of Charlottesville or not to advise the city or the county of Albemarle, but to advise the MPO Policy Board specifically. And we saw notes on that sort of coming up, that theme coming up a lot. In 2019, there was another purpose discussion. We've got a few folders on our drives that we found and we were able to pull some files from those. But folks had sort of the same questions that we're grappling with today. So what will CTAC do outside of an LRTP update? Does the policy board provide CTAC with those activities and direction, or does CTAC decide, which activities and initiatives that they do? Should CTAC members be appointed by one centralized body? And then also is CTAC a requirement? This is something that's come up in previous discussions about CTAC. Next, we did some research on other Virginia MPOs. So out of 15 MPOs in the state, 6 have a transportation-specific citizen advisory committee, and the only ones that are active are in the 4 largest urban areas. And so I listed those out here. So Fredericksburg, Hampton Roads, the National Capital Region, which is up around DC, the Richmond Regional TPO, and then there's a star next to Winchester, Frederick County, because I noticed that there was a citizen committee identified in their bylaws, but there were no notes, there were no meeting minutes, there was nothing on the website to show that they were an active group. And then we also did some searching around the region to see what other local citizen advisory committees do we have. And so Albemarle County has the Community Advisory Committees, or CACs, that supports county staff and the board in implementing their development areas master plan. And so what we saw about that is their CAC is often the first stop, right? Like if a developer is submitting, an application for something, they go to the CACs first and they give feedback. And then by the time it makes it to the board, it could look very different from when it first went to the citizens. So that's one group that we found. Charlottesville has their Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, or BPAC, whose purpose is to provide bicycle and pedestrian facility design and safety for all road users. Charlottesville at one point had a place design task force. That one also has not been active since 2021, but it was an advisory board to the Planning Commission and city staff on matters pertaining to urban design and placemaking. And then finally, we found evidence of a CAT advisory board that was established by resolution in 2018, but that one also is currently not active. And so what has CTAC done in the past? The things that we were able to find on our drive, materials that CTAC worked on primarily focused on the LRTP. And so we saw a survey that Chart developed to collect responses to include in the LRTP during an update. They built a public participation database back in 2009 to 2011 and collected 57 public input surveys. The other item on the front of this slide is a chart card. And so that had resources where citizens could find information about regional transportation. It had websites on there. It had links to different process things for the average citizen to learn a bit more about the transportation planning process. And then in 2009, we found a resolution of endorsement for new Amtrak passenger rail service through the region.
One other thing I can remember, maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago, when Smart Scale, the weighting changed. I know that we felt strongly that that was in the wrong direction, and some of us spoke to the MPO, but our recommendation was declined. Just as far as past activities, I think that was one thing that really something.
And then the challenges that have been observed by staff over the years for CTAC, and so we touched on it a little bit earlier. So the desire to advise bodies other than the MPO Policy Board. And so there was a memo in 2006 that was written to Albemarle County recommending specific concepts be incorporated into site plans. And then in 2025, so this year, there was a desire to draft a letter from CTAC to City Council. But that was another thing that staff struggled with understanding, like what is the chain of command, who does CTAC advise, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate coming from the committee. So there's also the desire to perform advocacy related work, the desire to develop subcommittees and have more frequent meetings, even though we might not have enough agenda items to support that for all of our MPO committees. And so that also would increase staff time and staff resources that would be required for that. Challenges differentiating between CTAC's role and MPO tech committee's role. And so if tech committee is supposed to be providing that technical feedback to the policy board, that then, you know, raises the question, like, what are the specific items that CTAC is supposed to be providing feedback on? Also challenging for staff to orient new members to CTAC without a clear understanding of what CTAC is supposed to do. And so how do we then tell a new member, here are the things that you're going to be asked to do if we also don't have a really great understanding of it? Unclear chain of communication, so we talked about that a bit. Does the MPO Policy Board value feedback from CTAC differently from feedback from the general public that we might be receiving from a survey, that we might be receiving from tabling that we're doing for a project? That was another bullet point that was included here. And then also individuals wanting to be added to agendas for the committee to present ideas for transportation solutions outside of the established processes that we already have to follow for these. And as far as CTAC's current interest, you all talked about it a bit back when you reviewed the bylaws and we talked through some revisions. And so, of course, we recognize everyone wants to be more active. Everyone wants to participate in CTAC and do something that's really valuable, but we're unsure how to do that with the existing transportation planning process and where CTAC might fit. The desire to inform planning processes that are not controlled by the MPO. So again, we participate a lot as a stakeholder in statewide studies that are going on where we don't necessarily drive like the milestones in that, the public engagement in that. We just participate as an MPO as a stakeholder. The desire to propose technical solutions to solve transportation issues, again, outside of those processes that are already established. And then the desire to advise on local transportation initiatives outside the policy board's individual authority. And we also included a slide on how has the public engagement landscape really changed since the early 2000s. And so, of course, when CTAC was created, there was a lot more reliance on mailed notices, printed newspaper ads. We saw a lot of evidence of faxing packets for meetings and things like that. And all of that required a lot of in-person staff capacity to be able to do a lot of those things. Access to information was limited by public attendance much more often. Information was shared door to door through liaisons or word of mouth. So again, using CTAC as more of a hub and spoke sort of model, like presenting the information to staff and then CTAC going out into the community and communicating that. And there were fewer opportunities for virtual outreach and engagement. So present day, staff perform in-person outreach through pop-up events, tabling, and paper surveys. The big difference is that a lot of our outreach is very project specific now. And so we have outreach that we do for the LRTP, outreach that we do for our comprehensive safety action plan, really specific to the projects that we're working on. Virtual and hybrid meetings are a lot more common. So they allow for more flexible attendance and increased access to information. Of course, we have a lot more of the internet. So email lists, social media, other digital communications that reach more people faster, and then online surveys and interactive data platforms that allow staff to gather more feedback from a broader audience with fewer staff resources. And that's not to say that we're not, still doing those in-person activities. We are still very much tabling. We are still very much going out into the community. It's just very project-based today. Okay, and then as far as next steps, so the MPO Policy Board did receive this presentation and they began to have some discussion amongst themselves. A couple of the questions included on this slide. The first one would be determine if a Citizens Advisory Committee is still necessary and desired by the MPO Policy Board. And if so, what is the specific purpose and the role of CTAC? What are the items that the MPO Policy Board wants CTAC to be working on? We also want to identify how CTAC's involvement can best inform the MPO's decision-making process. So out of all those roles and responsibilities that were included here, where can CTAC provide the most meaningful feedback for the MPO Policy Board? Defining the chain of communication. So looking at that MPO org chart, where does CTAC most appropriately fit? And then, of course, all the way at the end, we would eventually have a bylaws revision, membership, and appointment considerations.
you so much, Taylor, and for doing this deep dive into the history. It is really interesting to see how it all came together and what sort of topics have been recurring throughout time. Yeah.
Another note on what staff's doing. So we did hear how valuable this presentation was, and so we are going back to basics and we're creating welcome packets. Again, that's something that used to be done in the past. And so we're working on pulling a lot of this information sort of into a cohesive, maybe about 10 pages document that we could hand to someone who's new. And they can look and see, this is what the MPO does, here are the committees, actually having like committee member names on there. Really showing how it all works together. I understand if you only come to CTAC, maybe you don't know that there's a policy board, maybe you don't know that there's a committee.
Maybe I missed it. It sounded like there was a meeting between you guys and the MPO. Are there minutes of that, or is there a summary of how that went and what was discussed that you guys can share with us?
Yeah, I don't know if we have formal minutes, but we have notes that we can share, certainly.
Yeah, a lot of it is what Taylor addressed here in terms of the kinds of common things that come up that people feel like they're not really sure what their purpose is, so they're not sure how they're contributing to the goals of the community. And I think we talked about how like a lot of times we're presented information and it feels reactive, like we're just making a motion to pass something that's already been decided, like we're gonna write about you, but there's not really any time to make it. And then like, yeah, what is it that the policy board really desires from citizens and questions?
Yeah, I think that was a really big part of it. It's like how often we're getting a presentation after it's been presented to the policy board, like, yeah, with the tip amendment, like. They only had 2 days to sign approval for it, so there was no time for CTAC to provide recommendations or anything. And I feel like in my experience over the past 2.5 years, that's been very.
And so this.
What happens now that
Yeah.
there's a general, we're waiting for feedback from MPO to hear, do they value the input of this group or?
So we did ask them, you know, is there any other information that staff can provide for you all? And they just requested like just another sort of agenda discussion item for their next meeting.
Next meeting. I mean, it's open, but I'll let it go.
Right.
Gonna be, when is the next one? Oh, yeah, October 25th. Yeah, and I would encourage y'all to go to the MPO meetings. They're really interesting. There's good discussions that happen during them. I've learned a lot for those. And there's the technical committee meetings. Do you go to those?
I teach during that hour, so I can't.
Yeah. But I'm sure that those are great too.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We're gonna move into staff updates, and we are really short on time, so if everybody could try to be brief. I know that y'all are all very good at being brief. Gloria, did you want to present the final plan for safe streets and roads for all?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again. Don't really have any much updates from the last time we met. Just wanted to mention that the plan that was linked to the agenda is the final plan that has been adopted by all of our jurisdictions. We have about 6 days left until the end of the performance period, which is September 30th of this year. And after that, we're gonna enter the closeout process of the grant, which is gonna last up to 120 days. We still have a little bit of work left in these past few days. We're developing a couple of videos that are gonna go along with the plan after we get official approval from FHWA. And I think we're in pretty good shape to do all the closeout processes based on the federal requirements. That's kind of the major updates I had on the plan.
Yeah. Sarah has a memo about MPO Policy Board activities.
Yeah, there's
I'm
no.
adding this to the agenda. Thank you.
No, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so there's a memo in your packet with all the activities under consideration for the MPO Policy Board. So it's in there. I think things have been discussed already here. It's good to look at those. These are the things that the Policy Board will be taking actions on. And if you have any topics to add or suggest, so you are being made aware of everything going on.
Yeah. Okay, and then, yeah, Taylor, you can talk about the info and the SAW.
Yes.
MPO? Yeah.
So we, every other year, do a joint MPO Policy Board meeting with the Stanton Augusta Waynesboro MPO. And so that's being held this year, next Tuesday on September 30th at the North Fork Meeting Center. There is a hybrid option, so happy to circulate around that link if anybody is interested in joining, but they will have agenda items that touch on almost all of the modes. And so we will hear a presentation about transit. So we'll hear about the Afton Express that originates over in their MPO area and stops here. We'll have an update on the Charlottesville Albemarle Regional Transit Authority. We'll have a presentation on the DRPT statewide rail plan and also a presentation on the 3-notch trail. And so those are the major sort of informational presentations that they'll have. And then they will also have state agency remarks, minor presentations by VDOT representatives and a DRPT representative as well.
Taylor, and
Yes.
the raised Smithville grant application.
So just letting you all know, so this application for a bicycle and pedestrian bridge across the Rivanna River was submitted for a raise/build application back in January. We were informed that we unfortunately were not selected this round. I think maybe 30 or 33 projects across the nation were selected this time. We don't really have any feedback yet, but we do get the opportunity for a debrief meeting, and that will be held tomorrow afternoon. So we will bring back to you all any information that we hear from them as far as feedback about that application goes.
Yeah. And then the next CTAC regular meeting will be November 19th. This is off of our typical meeting, our new typical meeting regulation. Usually we will be on is it the last or the fourth?
It's the fourth.
The fourth. Okay, so then because that's the day before Thanksgiving, because it's gonna be on the third.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Chuck or CNPD, the updates.
Yeah, I'm gonna start. We have some pretty substantive materials, so I'm just going to try to hit the highlights for you. If you have questions. So first of all, we have technically two STAR studies that are going on US 29. We've been integrating them as one study, but the first one is from hydraulic to Woodbrook, and the second one is from hydraulic south to Barracks Road and doing the interchange. So they're two studies, but they kind of look like one to the public. We're getting them together. The first thing I just want to make sure that you all understand is that STARS is a planning program that is operated through central office. So they have resources, they reach out to the districts. The districts coordinate with the localities and the MPOs and the regional bodies to identify where there are areas of high interest. This is largely focused on areas where there are significant congestion and safety issues for the most part. And they put together a multidisciplinary team with a lot of support. So that includes lots of different disciplines represented from the districts, traffic engineering, roadway design engineers, district planning staff, etc. But it also includes technical expertise from a consultant on the project. So Michael Baker is running our current studies, and central office staff are also available as a resource. So this is the first corridor, again, from hydraulic up to Woodbrook. This just shows the intersections that are part of the data analysis. We're collecting a lot of data at adjacent intersections because some of the solutions are going to have impact we're focusing on 29, but some of the solutions will impact the adjacent intersections. So this gives us information to know what those impacts are going to be. The public survey that went out in April, this was the community responses. You can see that the biggest concern that people had on the US 29 corridor was reducing traffic congestion. So we did hear a lot of feedback about corridor safety. It seems like the congestion concerns were just the most consistent among all of their responses, but safety accessibility for other modes, aggressive driving also came up.
Go back one short bit, sorry.
A good response.
Right, because arguably speeding, corridor safety, pedestrian safety are all the same.
Yeah.
And so if you group those together, it'll be a little bit more powerful visual.
Sure, so some of those are subcategories, yeah. So we started by looking at all of the different plans in the area. V-Trans is the statewide transportation plan where they identify the statewide needs. PBSAP, that is the pedestrian and bicycle safety action plan that is developed by the state, where it says US 29 is a PSAP corridor. That means that it is a high priority where they have identified that there are a lot of improvements that are needed to promote pedestrian safety along that corridor. So we look at all of the needs. And so one of the challenges that we have with this corridor is that the top need identified in the statewide system is capacity preservation. US 29 is a corridor statewide significance. It's about 50% split based on the most recent origin destination study, where half the people are traveling that corridor are traveling through. They're using it for regional travel purposes. And about half of the people there are stopping along the corridor and they're using it for local purposes. So we have one corridor that's trying to serve two functions, and it's creating competing priorities, because there are the local priorities that say this is a big piece of infrastructure that cuts through our community, and we really want our community to feel more connected. But we also have the statewide priority of trying to maintain the capacity because it's an important regional piece of infrastructure. So that is the challenge that we're trying to solve through everything that we do. So we look at operations safety, and then we also make sure that we are evaluating opportunities to improve accessibility across 29 throughout the corridor. I'm not going to get too into the details on this, but we looked at the congestion. We identified PSI, those are potential for safety improvement intersections. So where there is opportunity to improve safety. Crash hotspot maps, you can look at all this in more detail. This is all in your packets. There's a catalog of where the fatal crashes are occurring. And then we also took an inventory of where the existing pedestrian facilities are. There's sidewalk, there's a sidewalk network on the sides of 29. It's really trying to get people across that are the barriers. So they're looking at each of the signalized intersections. Each of these is a signalized intersection where there are existing crosswalks and where there's a signalized intersection without a crosswalk. And then this little circle down there is the Zambrook Bridge. All right, and then just a couple of highlights about the pedestrian access. We did see on the site visit pedestrians crossing at unmarked crossing locations. They are pretty spread out all over the board. And then for the interchange area, we took a similar approach. The needs were pretty similar, looking at the southern area, including the interchange. The one thing I'll note, the one thing I do want to mention when you look at the crash maps is that at Hydraulic Road, I forgot to mention this earlier, but this was taken before the improvements were installed at Hydraulic Road now. So you'll see a big crash hotspot, but that is all before the improvements were in place. So we don't have an assessment of the safety with a comprehensive data set now that those improvements are in place at Hydraulic Road. So again, we did the same type of analysis, looking at where there were crashes, their crash hotspots, and then there's an assessment of what is contributing to a lot of those crashes in the interchange area. There are concerns with some of the high frequency of access points. Specifically coming southbound before the interchange, where you have the restaurants all right beside each other. There's some friction there. And then there was also some crashes, some off-road crashes related to the interchange geometry that were noted. The same assessment was done for the existing pedestrian infrastructure throughout the study area. And then there was a fatality related to a pedestrian crossing at 45. I believe that was within the pedestrian. fatality. I also believe that might have been at night. I can't remember. One of the things that we did in order to support some of the desires from the local stakeholders related to making sure we're comprehensively including considerations for bicycle and pedestrian accommodations as we did this, as we scoped in what is called a bicycle and pedestrian red flag analysis. So it's pretty comprehensive, but basically the consultants look at each flag of every intersection in the study area and compare it against a list of indicators that have been developed that indicate whether or not there is a comfort or safety risk associated with bicycle and pedestrian movements at that intersection. And what this does is it gives us kind of a quantitative measurement to compare different types of improvements based on how well they accommodate bicycle and pedestrian movements. So one of the things that's important to note is that when you're doing this assessment, you're not necessarily trying to eliminate all of the yellow and red flags. You're trying to point to them to show where there might be conflicts that create risk for bicycle and pedestrians and evaluate which risks are going to be a higher priority to resolve or consider mitigation strategies to try to reduce those risks. So this is all going to be part of what we consider as we are developing alternatives. There is a transit piece in this. The one thing I want to mention about transit is that this is not necessarily going to be a study that tells us what the transit plan for high frequency transit might be along US 29. It's going to try to help narrow down where future higher frequency transit could be accommodated in the future and make sure that that is being considered as we continue to make other improvements along. All right, so as we're looking at solutions, some of the things that we're looking at is that the main line of US 29 is operating pretty efficiently. There's a lot of volume of traffic moving through, but it's being processed pretty efficiently. However, when you experience delays along US 29, you're usually experiencing them coming from Raya Road or coming from Hydraulic or coming from those minor streets. So we're looking at ways that we can reduce the delay for those side movements without compromising the mainline throughput. And then we have strong emphasis on safety, trying to mitigate the risk of those higher impact crashes, the angle crashes and rear end collisions. And then looking at opportunities to provide pedestrian accommodation at targeted locations. This does not mean there's going to be a pedestrian crossing at every intersection of 29, but we're going to look for opportunities to put in pedestrian crossings where we can. Remember, we're trying to balance those two goals of maintaining throughput and increasing access. At the interchange, we are going to be working on reducing congestion, again, mitigating crashes and preserving capacity. And so we have a toolbox of solutions that you'll hear the term probably innovative interchanges or innovative intersections as we talk about what the alternatives are going to be. They're also traditional improvements. So an innovative intersection would be like a roundabout or something called an arc head, if you're familiar with arc heads, those kinds of things. Traditional improvement would be like a signal timing change or adding a turn lane. So we're looking at those kinds of things. And then we're also looking for low cost improvements. Remember, these are most likely going to be smart scale applications. So what we're looking is high benefit, low cost. So while probably we could all agree that grade separating Woodbrook might be a great solution. I don't know if Woodbrook's for Greenbrier might be a great solution. That's probably not going to be a cost-effective solution. And so the next couple of slides, again, are kind of showing what solutions are targeted at each intersection. You can look at these in more detail a little bit later, but the biggest thing to be thinking about as we go through this is where can we consolidate some of the left turn movements on the interchange and reduce some of those movements, reduce some of the intersections to be able to maintain the throughput. And then one of the things we're also looking at is how do we eliminate some of the crashes related with the weaving conditions that are occurring, after you go under the overpass at Riot Road. And then we'll also be looking at some alternatives to the interchange design that's currently there to try to improve the safety and operations through that hydraulic and interchange area. And so that's the very high level for the US 29. And then real quickly for the pipeline.
Could I jump in with a quick question? Well, maybe not quick. I don't know. I know we're late. I just wanted to bring up how I appreciate the toolbox of solutions, and I know this corridor, both of these study areas very, very well. It's part of my daily commute. There's a certain amount when you talk about half the traffic being local and half the traffic being pass through, part of the regional transportation system. I mean, having two masters like that is always going to be kind of a problem. And I just, part of this feels like rearranging the deck chairs on the USS should have built the bypass. And I'm wondering if any of the study conclusions might suggest that we bring up bypass again.
Just don't think that's on the table anymore. We have no way to fund it. The costs of funding that are going to be astronomical at this point. But I will say that was probably a quarter of the comments that we got. So I feel you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments that you want to add? Where's the time if there's just like one more comment maybe from you guys? Well, I think the only other thing is that we do have two project pipeline projects happening right now. I don't really have a lot of details. I do want to mention though that we're looking at the slides. The slides are in your presentation. We're looking at the DDI at 5th Street to try to value engineer that. We consistently hear that the bicycle and pedestrian connectivity across the interchange on 5th Street to I-64 is a major obstacle. I think it's just going to be really challenging to find a cost-effective solution that does everything, because what we're looking at right now is an alternative way to get bicycle and pedestrians through that area that isn't utilizing the bridge. Once we try to add the bicycle and pedestrian movements to the bridge, it creates a situation where we're going to most likely have to rebuild the bridge, which makes it prohibitively expensive. So we're looking at alternatives for what other alignments or other ways to get bicycle and pedestrian movements through that area could be. It may or may not be part of that application, but we want to regardless find ways to improve the existing conditions to the extent that we can in a way that's going to be a viable project. And then the other pipeline project that we're looking at is the intersection that everybody is very aware of as very dangerous, which is the 29 southbound to I-64 eastbound movement. So again, I think there are long-term solutions that would be really expensive that would solve the problem in the longer term, but we're really trying to focus on what can we do in the midterm, which the next 10 years, to try to improve safety conditions there for everybody.
How do we make like this street station example? How do we make sure in the future, if someone plans a huge shopping center like that question of how people get there, not in a car, is addressed from the beginning? It's just like when we build a subdivision, every year or every time we build a subdivision, it's like, oh yeah, well, what about sidewalks? Well, that's not part of this. It's like, what's the mechanism to get people to like force the bundling of these things?
I would suggest zoning and make it a condition of permit.
Yeah.
And I thought about that of how many missing pieces there are in the city of the trail. You can't get right of way. And yet the development, for instance, in Hallwater area, all of those things were many of them are on or near floodplains. They all needed some kind of special thing. And why the back 6 feet of the property line isn't a right of way, or you can't build anything. It's all law. But that occurs to me that zoning is one.
Yeah, it's absurd, and I feel like we talk about all that, and the final thing, the 29 issue with the traffic. Who's asking for that solution? It's a bottleneck, we all know, there's, you know, the restaurants. Trying to converge to get on 250, to get on 29 South. Who's asking for that to be fixed?
Who's asking for that? Well, it's a safety issue.
Okay, so it's driven by car crashes.
Well, I mean, that's one of the metrics. I mean, we're focusing on that corridor because there are several intersections along that corridor as well as the interchange that are showing up as having high safety and congestion issues. So that's why it was identified as a hotspot. As part of this process, though, we're going to be prioritizing what are the highest needs that we need to focus on through this corridor. But I think the issue, as you pointed out, is that those access points are creating a bottleneck for people that are trying to get on to the bypass.
I think there's a word, throat. Right.
What's that?
There's a word, throat.
Strode. Oh, but yeah.
Road and street. I mean, one solution I heard is really separating out the high-speed road and then kind of a side street.
Yeah,
I understand, yeah.
So world, we all understand that that would be the way to do it. We're kind of stuck with it, at least for now. So we need to make it function as best as we can, but it is a challenge.
So Sandy, what did you think of my solution to the 29 Interstate 64 ramp solution?
There's a similar, not exactly the same thing. There's something similar that that the consultants kind of have developed, and we sent them your design. I don't know if it was inspired by yours or if they independently came up with something similar. I'm not sure, but I think that's going to probably be something that could be considered for the long term. But again, is it going to be something that is likely to be cost effective in terms of smart scale, because it will be expensive?
Well, yeah, but there's no new bridges, so I think it's probably under $12 million, which is the golden number for smart scale projects. So the SIG property development, because I introduced this to the planning commission as well. This is the property owner in that quadrant of the interchange is seeking a rezoning, so they're apt to be cooperative with right-of-way acquisition that would be necessary, because it doesn't significantly impact their property, but it would make their property more valuable. So
well, we'll see. Right now, there's something similar that we're vetting, and so we'll see if it moves forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. We do have, maybe if we have 1 minute to go around, if anybody has any announcements about it.
So we do have on the agenda, there was a smart scale presentation that was supposed to come up here too. And I do recognize that we are at the end of time. That should have had a voting star next to it because there is a recommendation that you all have to make. But that being said, this was an instance of, this was coming to you all first. Like, this has not gone to MPO Tech. This has not gone to the policy board. So you all get to see this fresh eyes. So I don't know, Sandy, what do you think
Yeah, if we want to skip to like the next to last slide, that might be a way to do it. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, these are the the MPO has an eligibility constraint because they can't submit any project. It has to be either capacity expansion, interchange project, something of that type before they're eligible. So we went through all the studies that we have in the area, and these are the only projects that the MPO would be eligible to submit. So that's why we pulled these out of the studies and we were presenting to you. We wanted to get some recommendations on, do you guys want to the MPO to consider these projects. The one on the list, the 29 corridor study, is probably not something that's going to be eligible, will not be eligible. It won't be completed, I don't think, in time enough for smart scale. But the other ones are out of previous studies. So it's just a matter of these. Are you guys supportive of these for possible applications for smart scale for next round, which would be next year? And that's what we're going to talk about.
Included in the presentation, there was a lot of background in there as well, just about the smart scale process, the timeline. And so the timeline that we're working on for this is by March, we would have to be prepared to submit a pre-application for smart scale for these projects. And so these are the ones that the MPO would be eligible to submit. And there's also a staff memo in there. The only one where we had a different recommendation from VDOT was that US 29 corridor study. Staff recommended we not pursue that just because of what Chuck said, just to make sure that there's enough time to do adequate public engagement, get the support that we need for whatever the alternative is going to be. We know that that's a really important corridor. And so that's the only thing different than what VDOT has recommended here. Another thing I'll add is that we officially get 4 full application slots. So for pre-application, we can submit 5, and they allow us to do that in case one of them screens out for eligibility and readiness. And the only other thing that we're waiting on, I'm not sure if there's an update yet, but OIPI, so the state agency that administers this program, has to let us know if the MPO is eligible to submit those ramp extensions. So based on that response. Okay.
So it looks like there's 6 potential ones, and we can submit 5 for the pre-application.
And really today, so we're not looking for which ones do we submit now.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, VDOT folks, but we're just looking to know, are there any that we kind of want to press pause on? So this tells VDOT where to focus their attention on helping us develop application materials and all of that. There will be a later vote for the policy board and the committees on actually pressing like go on submitting these. Did I
There's a
capture
lot
that
of
correct, Sandy?
there's a lot of prep work that's got to go into getting the applications ready, getting the material ready, and that's the stuff I want to know now so we can start that process. We won't really need to know finally until spring which ones you're going to submit, but like I said, there are some eligibility requirements around definitely the northbound ramp extension or the southbound ramp extension. The northbound ramp extension, I think, because it does go all the way from Old Ivy to Leonard Sandridge, I think that one's probably fine because of the length of it. It would be considered an auxiliary lane versus just a ramp extension. But the other one is just a ramp extension. So that one would probably, we're still waiting to hear back from OIPI whether that one would be eligible or not.
I have just a quick question. Why are like some of this stuff, like the ones that, let's see, what is it, the 4th and the 5th one on this table, that both affect the northbound off ramp from 250 to there, that they're considered like 2 separate projects?
They could be combined.
Okay.
There's some discretion and.
Correct. One of them is just a ramp extension of the ramp on 250 itself. The other one is basically some intersection improvements and to accommodate dual left turns at the signals lights intersection at Barracks Road.
I'm just looking at that thinking, like, if you're gonna implement, I take that ramp quite often and I realize that it's the left turn that back up really far, trying to go west. But if, let's say we implement dual left turns, that potentially requires a different solution for the right turn traffic at that intersection, but that's like, if you implement that, then you wouldn't want, you may not necessarily need an off-ramp extension, so these seem like things that should be considered.
Yeah, it could be one or the other, or they could be combined.
But I'm saying, like, if right now we recommend one or the other, it's like we're already recommending a technical solution over the other one. When they should be evaluated simultaneously.
Well, you can do the ramp extension and alleviate the problem. The dual lefts also alleviates the problem. So you could do either one and solve the problem. And that's why we kept them separately. The ramp extension is much less expensive. The other thing is the dual left turn lanes includes adding a sidewalk from The city, it basically starts just east of the interchange but it doesn't run anywhere. So it starts and goes into the city. We would extend that sidewalk through the interchange and connect it all the way to, what's the name of the road? Surrey? I think it's Surrey.
Was that proposed in the last smart scale?
It was, so you'll recall that
Correct.
there was the roundabouts that were at the interchange. There was actually a shared use path that was going under there. Well, that was a really expensive project, so this is the alternative.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to get the shared use path through there, but we could extend the sidewalk.
Yeah, I remember that one was rated really highly, although it was also very expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it was cheaper, that might be really beneficial.
There is a lot of wasted capacity for the right turn lane, because right now what everyone's doing is like all the left turns are stacked on the left side, but there's like a lot of empty space where people are turning right because they don't need that much storage capacity. Even if the ramp extension is the cheaper alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue comes in is the left turn lanes basically block off the right. So the queue gets longer because the right turns can't get to the turn lane. So by doing this, we can accommodate the left turns and you could still get the right turns. Have the right turns. So it's widening, it's basically accommodating those dual lefts is going to be the biggest thing.
Can I ask about the bottom one, the US 29 I-64 improvements? I assume that's the 29 southbound where traffic backs up for like a quarter mile. I brought that up here before.
Correct. That's what that's trying to address. We're looking at that specific movement to see how we can solve that problem.
Is VTran priority 1, is that the top priority or is that a lower priority?
It goes from 1 to 4. 4 is the lowest, 1 is the highest.
Great. So I definitely support working on that one.
Yeah, that and the Fifth Street improvements. I mean, they're all necessary. Okay. Does anybody have any final comments about this proposal? Were we gonna vote on?
Yes, I should have put a star there. Yeah.
So I think that we would vote that these are all fine solutions and that we're good with the MPO pursuing, or we want to recommend that. What is the recommendation that we're making? That they continue looking at all of them? And that it would be VDOT.
With the exception of the US 29 corridor
With the
study.
exception of the US 29 corridor study, that we recommend pursuing all of these at this time. Does anybody want to bring that motion?
So.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Nathan, we didn't, you raised your hand. Are you opposed?
I raised
or-
it for aye, not for opposed. Sorry.
I see. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, but it might be further over. All right, well, I like having the roundtable updates at the end. If anybody has any information that they want to share with the broader group or any like news from the constituents that they feel like they represent in the MPO area. Does anybody have anything that they want to bring to the group to share before we head out?
Well, I'd still like to be able to show you what my solution is for the exit 118 interchange, just so you can see it before VDOT spends $50,000 to come to the same conclusion, but but whatever. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's, I can forward a couple articles, but there's been a lot of great things recently talking about how federal dollars allocated to the states for transportation and highways can be distributed to other funds. The states have the authority to take federal funds and say, instead of building a highway, we can do something else with that money. So I'll share that in one of the emails, but it's an interesting consideration.
Something else transportation related.
Yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be highway building, it could be something else.
Okay.
So interesting that there's a lot of flexibility actually in federal dollars that the states have access to.
Well, I did want to make a comment, sorry, that I appreciated that all of the proposals for smart scale were all interchange improvements and none were like capacity building. So I like that. Thank you. If no one else has anything to share, then I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.